Welcome to a special edition of the Get Off My Lawn Records podcast.
Get off my lawn!
I'm Donald W. Moore, and I started Get Off My Lawn Records. This week, I'm taking a break from doing my normal thing, but I'm still going to provide 7 videos of all sorts of things. Now, I've been recording myself for over 20 years, and I started on digital. I got my hands on Magic's Music Maker. I talk about this on the podcast. I didn't really know how records were made until I found out. So I started digital, but this is why I record to tape, but why I still also record to digital. This is my Tascam 688. This is the last multi-track cassette recorder that was greater than 4 tracks ever made. This thing was made in the early 90s. It has 20 inputs. It has 10 microphone preamps, and it's got a very difficult interface. In that era, they did not know what they were doing. There's no touch screens on this stuff. This is very complex. But you read the manual, you figure it out. And these are the tapes that I use. They're made in America. The raw tape is sourced overseas. This is considered, it's better than Type 2 tape that you would have gotten in the 90s. This is called Chrome Plus. It has an extended frequency range, and I can hit it with a hotter signal, which means I get a broader dynamic range for the audio recordings. This is what an album looks like. Well, this is really what a master would look like, plus a little extra. This is Freeform Friday Session 1. We recorded this on January 2nd, 2017, and each tape records for 15 minutes. So I put 2 takes on each tape. So this is how 6 tapes turns into 12. Every 15 minutes, you have to stop the recorder and change it out. Now, when you do this kind of workflow, you become very cognizant of how long you're going, which is great for YouTube because it's easy to make really long content, as you see with the full episodes. But when you want to keep it tight and you want to keep it listenable, you go for 7 minutes or less. This is a great way to do it. These tapes are made in Missouri. That's pretty cool. You know, when we say made in America, it sounds like a nice, broad thing. But these are made in a state, Missouri. And it's not too far from Texas. And they're nice people. And when I ordered a big batch of them, they got them to me in just a couple of days. They're very highly responsive. But there are limitations to working with these cassettes. The 15 minutes of record time is a limit. If you're trying to do something longer than 15 minutes, you can't do it to a cassette. You're going to have to you could run a slower speed to get more time, but then you lose fidelity. You could run 2 machines, have them overlap slightly, and then mix them together and synchronize them while editing. Though that's really hard to do. Or you record digital. That's about it. There's not a lot of options when you're trying to do more than 15 minutes. Tape is not entirely reliable. On Freeform Fridays 2016, we recorded session 5 to a 4-track machine, and the channel 2 became very problematic, and that was a real problem during mix, but I made do with what I had. Now, wow and flutter is a thing when we're doing this to YouTube. If you watch closely on Freeform Fridays that are recorded a tape, you'll actually see the sync drift in and out. I wind up losing or gaining about a half a second over the course of 7 minutes. So at the end of each video, I'm adjusting digitally the total speed just a little bit just to make it match the video, but it does fluctuate. Now, fast forward and rewind takes quite a while. Now, if you watch Freeform Fridays, you'll see I end every one of them with me rewinding an entire tape. Let's not forget, when you're trying to do takes and you're trying to mix and you got to go back, you got to sit there and wait a couple minutes. Takes a while. Now, nobody has a tape player anymore, right? So why would you make tapes? Why would you sell tapes? And because nobody has a tape player, not a lot of companies make tapes, so they could probably be made cheaper, but there's not a ton of competition out there. They are far more expensive than hard drive space. I can buy a 4 terabyte hard drive for about the price of 100 tapes, And 100 tapes will store 1,500 minutes of music on 8 channels. A 4 terabyte drive, I'm not sure I'd ever fill, not with just 8 channels of audio. They're not very portable. It's a whole box of tapes. It's a big machine. The machine weighs about 40 pounds. And you're not going to edit on tape. These have to be full takes, because if you try to edit or punch in, you're just going to have a real hard time. Punch-ins can be done, but ultimately you're every time you record over the top of the tape, it degrades, and these cassettes degrade faster. So you try to only work with projects where you're not going to have to edit. Just maybe fronts and backs, and you can do that digitally or when you go to do the master recording. Now, the benefits of tape are why we do it, right? So obviously the big one is the sound. They just sound different. You might not like the sound. They're not as clear. There's less detail in the very, very quiets, but it's a warm, comfortable sound that's pleasant to listen to. And they're archival. I'm pretty sure that all of our online cloud services will go away long before the tape actually fails. So if you're really thinking about long term, obviously vinyl is the actual analog option. You would go from analog recording to analog master on the vinyl. And that's going to be your best archival option, because those stampers will last a long time. The big upside to tape, though, is a formalized recording. When you're recording to a tape, everything's very precise. We know exactly when the machine's running and when it's not. And we're very cognizant of that, because it costs money. For every second that the tape rolls, it costs a little bit of money. So with digital, you can just kind of roll all day and not think about it. But when you formalize it, everybody plays a little differently, and I prefer that sound. The real big upside as a label is tape affords a much faster mixing workflow. When you see the videos where I do the mix tutorials, you'll see the very, very different approach to mixing digital and mixing analog. One's very slow. Digital, you can get very, very deep in the weeds, and you want to, because you have all that precision and all that clarity. But with tape, it's about get it done, get it sounding right, commit it, and it sounds good even when it is just thrown up with faders. Now, it's impossible to edit. That's a benefit. If you're stepping into a take and you go, this is going to have to be the take, you're going to practice, you're going to become a better musician, and then when you play and you commit it to the tape, you're going to have to own it. And if it's not ready, you're going to have to go practice and try again at a later date. Or you got to get it out. So it pushes you to be a much better musician than digital. Now, why I still record to digital is a whole host of reasons. Here's when and why. If I am going to have to edit, I go digital. I have to. If I have no intention of analog distribution, I am not a fan of recording something digital and then pressing it to vinyl. Only for archival reasons. I could see somebody doing it. I choose to record to digital and keep a digital, or when I choose to record digital, I choose to keep the result digital. Now, if I have to do something with more than 15 minutes on takes, I have to go digital. When I recorded Jomo and the Possum Posse, I had to roll for 2 hours continuous, and there is not a tape machine that can do it. If there's extensive overdubbings that are going to be required to make the album, tape's not a good option. There's a process that I believe Glyn Johns had developed called the Acusonic process, and that's a good way to do overdubs without really killing the tape. But every time you run that tape over the head, it degrades slightly, so you want to play it back as little as possible, and overdubbing requires a lot of playback. Now, the big pitfall with tape, even with my little 4-tracker, it's not as portable as an 8-channel digital Zoom. They're small, they're easy to move around, and if I'm going out to a gig, it's pretty hard to justify throwing this thing that's almost the size of a keyboard, arguably bigger just because it's square, and set that up when Digital, you can just throw it up and get your recording and get out of there. So why cassette? Why not large format? Well, cost. It's the long and short of it. I'm getting the cassette tapes for about $2 a piece. And reels, even quarter-inch reels, are about $30, $40 a piece. And that's 20 minutes of record time. It's very, very expensive. There's additional complexity with a reel-to-reel. I have a quarter-inch, but loading it is very difficult. You have to unpack tape differently, and the rewind has to be a lot more precise, and things can go wrong. And then there's the size of the equipment. They're just big. They're really, really big, and if you need any sort of portability, reel-to-reel is not your friend. But really with tape, it's about getting out of the way. Just get out of the way of the music, just capture it, and let the musicians play how they're going to play. And you're going to get a better result when everybody knows that that's the limit. But tape requires that musicians be musicians, but it does it in a way where you will never permit yourself if you try to do it digitally. You cannot edit. In digital, it's almost impossible to resist the urge to edit. So thanks for watching, and leave a comment. Let me know how I did. Do you like recording to tape? And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. I'm doing this all week while I'm taking a week off. And on next week's episode, we're going to talk about why I had to take the week off. Thanks for watching.